Hey guys, welcome to the Recraft Relic channel and I hope you are doing well. So today we are back. I'm back with the another live coding session and it's again based on Vue.js, and what we are going to today is we are going to build a image slider from scratch. So let's get started. The whole idea is to basically create a image slider component which basically will have a next and previous button, and you can click on those next and previous button to move between slide, and the slide will animate from it will be like a fading animation from left to right, right? The library that I'm obviously we are using Vue.js, and addition to that I'm using Animate.css CSS for the animations, and I'm using Tailwind for all the other styling, right? As you can see, I already have a sample project here, and here is the application. If we go to the index.html, I'll remove this. You can see I have two CDN libraries here. So first is Animate.css and the other is Tailwind.css. This is not the best way to include these libraries into your project. There are other ways, like you can install these in your project using npm, but for the sake of the tutorial I'm just going to use them like that. I'll put this links in the description, and you can also go to cdnjs.com to if you want to get a cdn hosted version of any library. All right, so let's get started. So this is our the main app, and let's remove this extra styling. We don't need that. Right. So what I want to do is I want to center my image slider into in the center. So I'm just going to go here and do a div. Now I'm going to use some Tailwind classes. Firstly, I'm auto to give it a margin auto from both sides, and then width to maybe 1/2 to give it like the 50% width of the viewport. Let's extend it a bit. So okay, now so we have this now. Let's create our image slider component. So let's go here, image slider, and just go here, image slider, image slider, image slider, and just rename this file to image slider as well. Now go to image slider and change the component name to image slider, right? Now what we have to do basically is we'll start by creating our the master div, which is already there, like the parent container. That this is the topmost container, and then let's give it some margin from the top. Class am top 10. So if in case you're wondering, these all are Tailwind classes. You can go to Tailwind css.com or tailwind.com to just go through the documentation of this, right? And I also will link the documentation in the description, so you guys can go and have a look there as well. So now we have the margin here. Now we'll start by creating our div which will contain our slider content. So there will be two main div. The first will be for the content, like the slides, and the second will be the button container. So basically the next and previous button will be in that container. So this will be a slider container. We'll just make it relative. The reason I'm giving it relative because the children's will be absolute, because all the slide will like sit top on of each other and they will slide. So I'm just going to give it relative slider content, right? And now let's create our slides. So for creating slides, what I want to do is I want to pass a prop which will contain all the slides, like images for all the slides, which can be passed to this component through its parent. That makes sense because we don't want the static slides. We want it to be like customizable according to the how the parent want to use this component. So I'm just going to define a prop, and I'm just going to say slides and make it a array. Right, so now we have an array, of the slides. And then what I'm going to say is I'll go inside this and I'm going to say div, right, v4 slide in slides. Okay, we bind. Now we have to provide a key. So basically slide will be our image URL. So we're just going to assume that it will always be unique. It's not the best practice, but yeah, for the tutorial it will be fine. In real world scenario, you should add like a identifier to each slide to differentiate between the keys, basically, in different slides. So we bind key slide. That's good. That's good. And the other thing that we need is a data index. So the reason I'm putting a data index is we want to like put animation into it. So and we are going to use data index for basically selecting this element and like adding animations to it. So I'm just going to say data index will take the value of I. And what is I? Wait a second. So I have to bind this. So I is like the index of the slide, which we are in currently. So the reason I'm binding is because this is a JavaScript expression, and in order to tell Vue.js that you need to use the value inside I just have to bind it. And we bind data index I think that's pretty much it. The other thing that I have to do is add a class to it. So class will be absolute, right? Absolute, the reason being like all the slides will sit on top of them, and the other will be shadow LG. Shadow LG is basically going to provide shadow to the whole element. And inside this will be an img component, image component, which, so I'm going to bind the source as well. So we bind source slide. So slide, as I said, slide will be the image, the URL of the image. And I'm just going to close this, and this is pretty much it, right? So now let's go here and pass our slides. So I'm just going to say we bind slides equal to slides, and here I'll create an internal local state, return slides, and I'm just going to say, all right, so I'm going to use Unsplash. If you don't know about Unsplash, Unsplash is like like a image provider, but it lets you like generate fetch random images. So I'm just going to use that, put it here, and you can also specify the height and width, the dimensions of the image. So I'm just going to say 800 into 400, and yeah, so let's just go with this, and let's create 4 slides. All right, I'm just going to put a comma here. Let's see if that works. It should, right? Let's see. So is it working? I don't think so. Yeah, it is. So you can see the image, right? If I inspect it, you can see the 5 images, right? But the problem is that the last image is coming at first, because if you look at the hierarchy of the HTML that is created, it is first element, second element, third element, and the fourth element, right? 0, 1, 2, 3. And the 3, because the 3 is the latest element, it's going to be at the top, right? So we don't want that, right? We want to show the 0th element, the first element, to be like shown first. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to make the other slides 1, 2, 3 to be like hidden. All right, so we have to hide them. In our case, we'll use display none, which we can do by adding a hidden class to all the element which is not the first element, right? So what I'm going to do is, if you're not familiar with the lifecycle of Vue.js, there is a lifecycle hook called mounted, which basically run when all of the HTML is mounted of the current element. So what I'm going to do is mounted. I'm just going to say this. I can use so I can just go with this. This is the slides dot for each slide and index. I'll explain this logic in a bit. Const element document dot query selector, and just say data index equal to the index. All right, and then I'm going to say element dot class list dot add hidden. All right, so what is happening here? So basically what we are doing, we are saying that take all the slides, take their indexes, for every index get the element and just add the class hidden to it. Why this works is because we have put this, right? So data index is there, so it is added as an attribute. So if you go in here, you can see it is added as an attribute. For the first element, 0, then 1, 2, 3, because that's how we are, like how we defined it. We said that, you know, for every loop you can use I as a data index. So now what we are going to do is we are going looping through all the slides, and we are saying where the data index is 0, where the data index is 1, just take them element for like every index and just add the class hidden, and that's why you can see the hidden classes here, right? But we don't want to add it to the first element. So in our case, what I will do is I'll create a local state here called data. Data, right? Return. I'll call it current slide index and just say 0. So always the first element will be the current slide index, right? So I mean most of the time. So now we're just going to say the current slide index. I'm just going to do this. If index not equal to this dot current slide index, if it is not equal to current slide index, just hide it, you know, for the first time when we are mounting, right? And let's go here, see if that works. It's reloading. It's taking time. All right, let's see if that works. So you can see that this doesn't have hidden class, the 0th element, but everything else have a hidden class, right? And that's what we wanted. We wanted to show this element, but not all the other elements, right? So that works great. So the other thing, we don't need this, so I can just do maybe like this, right? So that's great. Now let's implement our next and previous button and try to animate these images. So let's go here, create another div and create our button in those. So div, then I'm just going to say a button, right? A button, and this will be next. If I save it, all right, I think we are not able to see it. The reason being, if you go here, this slider, it doesn't have a height, and because of that the element is going. The reason it doesn't have a height because all of its element are like position absolutely. So now what we are going to do is we are going to give it a height. So we are just going to create a scoped style, and we're just going to say dot slider content have a height of 400 pixel, like this, and it should work, right? Yeah, so you can see not 400. What is the height of this? It's around 234 or something. But what we're going to say is we're just going to make its height to 250. Right, and that's it. So reload this page. So image is loading. Until then, let's style our component. So let's go here and say v, not v. Let's say class equal to, firstly we are going to say some padding, not like this, p from top, let's say p from top 3, p from bottom 3, p from left 5, 5, p from right 5. All right, let's do that. So if you do that, you can see there will be some, I mean, you can't see it, but there will be some padding. You can inspect it and see. Then what we're going to do is we are going to say, let's give it a background. Background green, maybe 400. Right, let's save it. And let's give it rounded border. And then let's make the font bolder. Right, and then let's do a text white. Right, it looks good. In case you're wondering, all of these classes are Tailwind, so you can go ahead and check those. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the previous. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to position them like at the farmost edges, like one will be at the left, one will be the right. I want to change the order basically here. So let's do next at the right side and the left at the left side, like the previous as the left side. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make their parent. I'm just going to choose a class and say D, not D, but flex, and justify space between. So justify between. And what will basically happen is that it will, so basically we are making the container of flex, we are setting the display of the container as a flex, and then we just say that both of the child should have like space in between, so it will like push all both of the element to the edges. So previous, next, great, but they don't work right now, do they? No. Right, so let's make them work, and which is like the more tricky part. So we'll go ahead and define our next method. So methods, and inside method there will be on next, right? So what will happen on next? Our element should change, right? Somehow it should change. So all right, so let's get started with that. We'll define we'll go ahead with we'll go ahead with by selecting the current element, because we want to add some classes to it in order to animate. So we'll start by that. So firstly and foremost, what I'm going to do is const element equal to document dot query selector. Same thing, it will be a data index. And how do I know that, what is the current index? Because we are already saving it inside the current slide index. So I'm just going to use that. This dot current slide index, and I'm just going to wrap it in a template literal. Great. So we now have the element and we have to like animate it, right? So let's do that. So I just pick this element. I'll just pick this and I'm just going to say, add some classes to it, right? Or animate it somehow. So in order to animate, we basically have to put some animation classes using animate.css. So in order to do that, firstly and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another method called animate. And this animate function will be the main function which will animate any of our component. All right. So the other thing that I want you to do is go to animate.css. Because we are using animate.css, you can use any animation which is defined in animate.css. There are like a lot of animation. You can see jello, heartbeat, back and down, or whatever, right? But the main that we are going to use is fade in left and right, because it just gives a nice professional slider animation. So this is the animate function, right? So what we're going to do inside the animate function is we are going to animate the elements. So we're going to pass the element that we want to animate. We want to pass the animation that we want the element to, and the type of the animation, right? So let's right, and then there will be another callback function. We'll call it on animation and this is basically will allow you to do some cleanup functions. For example, if you're sliding something, you want to, once it's slide, you want to hide it, then we are going to use on animation or you want to do other stuff like providing a callback to the parent when animation and stuff like that, right? So element, animation, on animation and great. The first thing that I want to do is element dot class list dot add. So we are going to add to the class. So there is a one static class that we always have to add, which is animate animated, which is basically a animate.css class. If you go here, you can see you always have to add this. It basically tells the animate that animate.css to this component should be animated. And this is the first class that we want, and then the other classes, right? Which is the animation one. So we just want to animate. So we are adding animated class. The other class that we are adding is basically the animation that we want to put here. So this is one thing. Let's check this out if this works. So I'm going to use this animate, copy this, go here and say this dot animate. We already have the element, and the animation will be which animation I want, let's say light speed left, not in but out. The reason we want to do a out, out is not here, yeah, here, is that when you click on next, the current element should goes out, not come in but goes out, and the other element should come in. We'll look into that, but right now if you have to animate this slide, it will go out like this, right? So whatever we are going to do is we are going to image slider is defined but never used. Yeah, let's remove this for now because we don't need it. And so let's just reload this, and yeah, let's see how it works. Yeah, so I always forget to add event listeners. I'm not sure why I do it, but yeah, that's how I work. So on click, I'm just going to say on next, right? That's it. So on next, yeah. I'm just going to reload it. It will come with a random image again. And let's click on next and also see the classes being changed. All right. So I'm just going to go here and let's see. This is the one. So let's click on next. And you can see the animation, right? It goes like this. Let's reload it and see for once again. Right, so I go here, I click on next and it animates, right? Which is good. But the other thing we want to do is we want to get the next slide to come in from the right. So what we are going to do is we are going to say const next element, right? Const next element equal to the current index, the current slide index plus 1, because that makes sense, right? It's like number plus 1, right? So now we're going to do is do the same thing. We have to animate this. Let's do the same thing. Instead of this the current slide index, we are going to use the next element, and or I can say next element index, and this element to be next element, and this to be next element, and instead of out, let's make this in, and instead of left, make this from right, because it will come from right, and that should work. I guess it should. Let's see. So we are here and we have this. Let's click on next. Let's see what happens. So it slides in and you can see the class getting added at the data index 1, the second element, which is the second element. So you can see the first element had light speed out left, which you can see there, but light speed in right is not working. What is the reason? The reason is that it has a hidden class, and because of a hidden class, you'll not be able to see it, right? Because it's display none, right? So what we have to do is we have to remove the display none. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to universally think that whenever we are animating an element, we have to remove the hidden class. All right. So I'm just going to go here, element dot remove, class list dot remove, and just say hidden. So whenever you are animating, remove the hidden classes. All right. I go reload. Let's see if that works. Right. If I go inside app, inside this, inside this, you can see the element, right? Let's see. Click on next, and you can see, right? Right. So you can see it coming from there and just staying there. So that's good, but the problem is that it is not moving forward, and the reason it is not moving forward because the current slide index is not changing. So we have to change the current slide index, right? So let's say current slide index equal to next element index, right? Which makes sense, right? Because now the current slide is the next slide, right? So let's go here, reload the page, and let's try to animate it. All right, so click on next, right? You can see the the image going out, and then you can see this. One problem I think you'll be able to see is that all the images are same. The reason being this URL, once it hit their API, it gives us an image, and when you try to hit this URL again, basically Chrome is caching the image. In order to trick the browser to think that we want to load a different image or we want to load a different URL. What we're going to do is we're going to do something like this, which is like this is like a harmless and there is no functionality related to it. There's no change in how we load the image. We are just tricking the Chrome browser to think that we are loading a different image, and so don't cache it basically. So when I will hit reload, now if I'll click on next, you can see, right, it loads different images, which is great. Now the other problem is that if at the last, if I'm at the last index and if I try to click next, this will happen. The reason being, there is if you go in the elements, you know that we have passed like 4 slides, right? So there will be only 4 slides in here, and the problem with that is once the 4 slides are completed, our current slide index plus 1 become a 5, and then because the 5 doesn't exist, it throws an error. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function called get next slide index, and what this function do is basically it returns the next slide. So what I want to do is I want to do a whole round. So what will happen is 1 2 3 4, and after 4 it will again restart from 1 2 3 4 like this, right? So it will be like a revolving slider basically. So what we are going to do is for here is like if this dot current slide index plus 1 is smaller than this dot slides, so the slides dot length. So basically the slides is an array passed to us, so I can just get it length. So what I'm going to say, for example, right now there are 4 slides, right? So it is the index number will be 0 1 2 3, so maximum it can be 3, right? So in case if it's already like if for example if it's 2 and 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 3, the slides length is 4. So if it's like smaller than 4, then what we have to do is we can return this dot current slide index plus 1. All right, so basically if it's 2 and 2 plus 1 is 3, and if it's still smaller than 4, then return the current plus 1, right? So if it's 2, return 3, but if it's 3 plus 1 is not smaller than 4, then fall back to 0, right? Because 3 is the last element, right? Like the last index number, like 0 1 2 3, and return 0, right? So basically when it's 0 0 plus 1 is 1, so return 1. 0 plus 1 plus 1 is 2, return 2. 2 plus 1 is 3, return 3. But 3 plus 1 is 4, which is the index that doesn't exist, goes to 0 again, right? So this can be a little bit tricky, but if you have if you have experience in programming, you already know that arrays start from 0. And yeah, so I click on next, I click on next, I click on next, and then again I can click on next, right? Okay, it will not work because we haven't used it. Yeah, so I'm just going to say this dot get next slide index, and instead of a next element index, I'm just going to say next slide index. All right, because just keep it common everywhere, because everywhere we are using slide index, and here it is like element index, right? So let's do that, reload it, and let's see. Click on next, click on next, click on next, click on next. Not working. Why it's not working? So the reason it doesn't work is that this element, the first element which we want to show here, already have a light speed out left animation, and even if we add the light speed in right, because you can see it is here, which is like the from the right, it doesn't work because it already have that left animation. So we have to remove any other animation on this element. So in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to like get all the classes which it already have and remove all the other animation classes, right? So it's a bit tricky. How I'm going to do is like this. So plain class list. The reason I calling it plain class list is because the element dot class. So what we are basically going to do is from the class list array. So we'll get all the class names. We are going to check which are the animation classes and remove them. All right. So the problem with the class element dot class is that it's not a array, it's a DOM token list, which is kind of like a array, but that's a whole different topic. But yeah, it's a token list and we have to convert it to array. So in order to convert it to array, what we're going to do is we're going to say array dot prototype array dot prototype dot slice dot call, and just put element dot class list. And what it's going to do is it's going to convert it into a normal array. So what we're going to do is const animations to remove equal to plain class list dot filter class name dot includes animate. All right. So basically what we are doing, we are extracting all the classes from the classes which have the prefix animate. So if it has the prefix animate, then it should be removed basically before applying another animation like this, right? So all right, so let's say class animation to remove, and what I'm going to do is, so we have an array, and we can just go here and just say triple dot. The reason I'm able to do a triple dot here is that basically class list takes a a comma, all the classes that you want to remove in a comma separated manner. So for example, hidden, comma this. So I'm just going to spread the whole array, which is like comma separated. It will just pass all the argument in a comma separated way. So hidden and the other class, then comma, then another class, and comma, and another class, right? I'm also going to console it, so in order to make this simpler, so console.log, so you will be easily able to understand it. So console, just reload this. Let's click on next. It will be empty. Makes sense, right? Now you can see, right? And now if I click on this again, you can see I'm able to animate between different different items. The reason, because I can do animate light speed. I'm just removing all of these animation and adding new animation, right? Great, works, makes sense. Now let's do a previous moving to the previous slide. Let's create a function for that as well, or method as we call it. On previous, this will be a bit different because you have to reverse the action. So the current element will have light speed in left because it will come from left, and instead of get next slide, we need a new function called get previous slide. Right, next slide index. Instead of next slide index, we're just going to say what I'm doing, I don't have to remove the whole string, just going to say previous, and here instead of next element, I'm just going to say previous, right? This will be out because we want the current index to go like this, because when you do a next, it comes like this. So when it's previous, it will go like this, right? So light speed out left and light speed in from left. and this will be right. I think it will work. Let's create our previous function instead of next. This will be previous. So in our case, we are going to say if the current index is greater than 0, then you can minus 1. So for example, it's 1, you can minus 1 and get the 0, which makes sense, right? And so, minus 1, right? But if it is 0 or less than 0, then you can't, right? Then you can't minus it, because if you're 0, you minus it, you will go to minus 1, which is not a valid index, right? So basically this is, so if it's 2, you can minus 1 and get to 1, but if it's 1 and then you minus 1 again, then it's become a 0, right? Which is good, right? Which is fine. But if it's a 0 and then you minus 1 again, then it's become minus 1. So we put a condition there. And if it's 0, then if it's already the first element, then we will revolve around to the last element, right? So which is this dot slides dot length -1. So if the length is 4, the index should be 3, and it should work. I'm just going to add this on click to the previous button. On previous, let's see if this works. I guess it should. Click on next, 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 next. Great, it works. Like click on previous, it doesn't work. So this dot get previous slide is not a function, it says. Get previous slide index. All right, so okay, that's fine. So now let's go to previous. Great. Yeah, so you can go to next. Great, that works. Let's change the animation because this is a bit cartoonish. So let's just say light speed. Instead of light speed, say fade out, fade in, right? So let's just save this and reload this and see how that works. So this looks great, right? And we go to previous as well. But there is one problem still with this slider, which is not visible, but it is there. And it's going to affect us if we are not careful. So the problem is this. When you click on next, so let's click on next. This element, it's still, you can see, it's still like here, right? Here, it's still here. And it's basically not hidden, right? And it can cause issues with other elements, at the side and all that stuff. So, in order to remove that, what we are going to do, we are going to say there is a on animation and function. And what this on animation function do is, if on animation, then we are going to say element dot add event listener animation. And so basically this is a event listener provided by native browsers when the CS animation is completed on an element dot add event listener on animation and once true. So once true, basically what it will do is that it will only be fired once, because we only want it to fire once when the animation is being the animation is happening. So, and what we're going to do is, when something slide out of the viewport, when it's not active, like this, we're going to say hide this element. All right, so we're going to say element dot class list dot add hidden. So right now, if you go here, and if I click on next, you can see the hidden being removed but not being getting added, right? Which is not consistent with what we did at the start. We don't want other elements to be seen, right? We just want the current element to be seen, and so we have to hide the other things, right? So class list that add hidden, and the same thing we have to do for this thing, which is basically fading out. Let's see if this works. I think this should. So images are loading. Great. Now let's go into our HTML. Let's see. Next. And you can see the hidden class at the right. And now it's not in the DOM. You can see it's not visible at DOM, which is like the right thing to do, because we don't need it anymore. And when we click on previous, you can see, right? Next. Click on next. Click on next. And only you can see hidden. This is visible. This is hidden, and this is visible, right? So now the element can't create issues with other element on the page. And yeah, I mean, guys, this is pretty much it. This is how we're going to create a slider from scratch in Vue.js and on even in React or any other library. And yeah, so we basically created a image slider with different slides. I can go ahead and even right, so, and you can see you can also customize the slides. So you can have any number of slides you want. So for example, I have 6 slides now, so I can just say 5 6. I can reload the page. 1 2 3 4 5 6, and it will basically show me 6 slides. The images are loading, so I click on next, and you can see the 3 4 5 6, and yeah, again, right? And you can go previous if you want. And yeah, you can play with the animation. You have Animate.css. You can like maybe position this previous next at the top. That is also good. So yeah, guys, this is pretty much it. And please let me know if you like these kind of videos, and what kind of other topics that you want me to cover. And yeah, I'll come back with a new video on Saturday. So yeah, till then.